Thanks for having me here. A lot of these times, look, I haven't been live in front of people speaking in a long time. It's actually refreshing. It's nice to get away from that screen and, meet people. I haven't seen BD in, probably 5 years from our NBA days. But a lot of the synergies and stuff that has been said today, it's refreshing. I've done this for a long time. I haven't heard a lot of the ideas and concepts. Listening to Gabby talk about going to Senegal, changing her life, her position, similar to what I just went through, and I'll walk you through kind of as much my life innovation, I guess, as the business innovation and what we're trying to do really on the baseball side. Missy talking about co-creating, find brands. The team side gets so lazy by selling IP and leaving it to the partner to go figure out what to do with it. And that's not where I came from. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Someone took my chair with the clicker, I think. No, it's in my pocket. I thought I left it on there for a second. Right now, I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of the New York Mets. I joined them a year ago. Before that, I'd spent 25 years at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. I grew up as a kid in Ajax, this little town outside of Toronto. I'm Canadian. You'll hear my out and abouts here today. I can hear them myself now that I've lived here for a year. Both of my sisters went to McGill, which is the Harvard of Canada. They were very smart girls. I was the dumb brother that went to Bowling Green. My dad played hockey there. My grades were okay, but I wanted to go to school in the U.S. I had dreamed of going to Michigan or one of those schools, and it was a great life experience for me once moving away. I think it's one of the things that impacted where I'm kind of at today. Once I was done graduating BG, I have a marketing degree. I don't have a sales degree. I'm not a salesperson. This will not be a sales pitch for the New York Mets. It's as much just about how exciting transformation and innovation can be. So I had no money when I graduated from BG. Had to go home, live with my parents again, and I talked to the Maple Leafs. They wouldn't return a call. Called the Blue Jays, wouldn't return a call. Sat with IMG once. They told me by the time I drove from Bowling Green, they hate when I tell this story. I drove 5 hours back to Toronto to do an interview, and when I got there, they told me the position was already filled. That was a little heartbreaking. And then the Raptors were new in 1995 and 1996, and I sat down with Chris Overholt, who was Overactive Media. OV is now a good friend and a mentor, and we had one meeting together, and he told me it'd be a couple weeks before they decided. And he called me that night. It was a Friday night. I was going back to school on Saturday, and he said, if it's yours, you can have it. 25 years after that, again, I started as an intern. The Leafs and Raptors merged and became Maple Leaf Sports. We bought a Major League Soccer team, got to build a new stadium, got to invent TFC and the brand surrounding them. Worked in the CFL, one of the hardest things I've ever done. Most of you probably don't even know what the CFL is in here. Very difficult league, very Canadian, not very relevant. Apathy is, it's not a good thing in sports. When people don't know who you are or what you're doing or where you are, it's a very dangerous thing to get into. But Maple Leaf Sports was always great to me. We started two digital television networks. I was allowed to run those. And as I kind of grew up through the organization, I took on more and more pieces of the organization and more roles. And like I said, I left there as their Chief Revenue Officer. And it was one of those days, I think, it was a little bit of COVID. I'm 48. I've been wonderfully married for 23 years. 3 great boys. And when you're sitting there at home, and we're just talking about, am I going to do this my whole life? Am I going to sit here in Toronto, nice little city, but are you going to show your kids the ability to grow? Are you going to take a chance? Everyone was talking about, Chris and just commenting. Comfort is not growth. I could have sat and rode that chair out in Maple Leaf Sports probably for as long as I wanted. It was a really interesting kind of decision, and I chatted with my boys about. One of my oldest son is on an esports and an academic scholarship. He wanted to go to school in the States. He had that ability. My middle son got to reinvent himself by going to high school. I think he had a difficult time in high school in Toronto, and he's having a great time now in Connecticut. And my youngest was a little different. He was really popular at school. He was the captain of his hockey team. He did all those things. So him moving was a bit of a challenge. But all of them to this day were in for an adventure, because to push yourself and to be able to try and do different things, Maple Leaf Sports turned into a behemoth, and I would say I was comfortable, Chris. I was almost lazy. It was a machine that understood what we had all built and what we had done. And it was a piece where, are you ready to challenge yourself to do something innovative and different? And the NBA, in my mind, and this is nothing against baseball or the NHL or anything, but the years I spent in the NBA had formed a lot of what I know. Brendan was talking about we don't sell signage, and I'll bore you with that piece in the back. And it's nice to see more and more of us talking about that and being able to build it. But to have a chance to move to a league I've never worked in. Like I said, I worked in the NHL, NBA, MLS. I worked in all the farm league. I ran NBA 2K. I done all that. And the ability to move to a city like New York, work for a brand like the New York Mets, who I think have the most upside in professional sports if you're on the business side. They were a little bit of a tarnished brand. They're always lovable losers, and everyone talks about what they were. And the chance to see if I could actually, or we as a team, could take that brand and rebuild it with the right partners and the right people to be able to be great. And there's no better city, no offense to Boston, I'm from Toronto, to try and do it in New York. And one of the things I've been really proud of so far is I didn't know anyone. I had lots of executives and CEOs I know in the NBA, NHL, across all the leagues, but I really wanted to challenge myself and see if I could, little Canadian kid, move to New York, work for the Mets, and try and evolve where we are at. And to date, it's been extremely rewarding. I met Steve and Alex Cohen. I had actually told them at first I wasn't interested. I was being comfortable and kind of lazy. And our conversations were really shocking. And I like telling the story about Steve. Steve is a family person. And the first time I had met him, I did a call with Sandy Alderson and our other CEO at the Andy Cohen at the time. And it's kind of a funny story. I was on with them. I hung up at 3 o'clock on a Thursday. And I'm on the phone with my current CEO at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. And my phone keeps ringing and ringing and ringing. And my CEO in Toronto is getting mad because he can keep hearing that click coming through his phone. And it's Steve Cohen, and the other people are texting me saying, Steve Cohen is trying to call you. Would you answer your phone? And I'm like, I can't hang up on my CEO to answer the phone who could be my future CEO. But the whole time Steve and I talked that day, we didn't talk about business. We didn't talk about strategy. We talked about family. And I told him how important my family was. He talked about what he was building, and he talked about what was important to him in success. And winning the right way, you'll hear him say a lot, but we've invested $275 million in players. We've already put, it's actually closer to $250 million in reinvesting in the building. And then the commitment that the two, Alex and Steve, have put towards winning puts us in an amazing strategic foundation that we've set up with clear mission, vision, and values. There were some mission, vision, and values before. I'm a big believer in them. It puts you on the right path. And you know what else it does? It helps you align with the right partners. You have something that everyone believes in. It's culture. It matters. And I used to think it was a sign on the wall and how people didn't understand that, how to be successful and how to be appreciated and how to be a family person and oriented and trust, respect. And as I went through life and I started growing up in the work world, it's just not common sense to everyone. And to be able to start with that and rebuild what they were talking about, it really inspired me to be able to want to take this chance and do something new. So right now I look after ticket sales, partnerships, food and beverage, retail, but I'm most passionate about partnerships. And what everyone else has already said today is it's not sponsorship. I sponsor my 14-year-old kid's hockey team. Why? Because they need the money. New York Mets do not need the money. We need to be building strategic marketing solutions. And this is a bit of an evolution for our team and where we're at today. But it's being able to listen to your partners, right? It's dynamic solutions. The example we use with IBM and esports, that was back in Toronto. 13 to 17-year-olds do not know who IBM is. And to be able to take them when they're all gaming and have them follow NBA 2K, to be able to see that Watson, who is the smartest computer in the world, we are using that technology to make the esports team better, that's what we need to do. That's what makes us different. So the partnership philosophy, again, this started through NBA training that, Brendan and I always went through. And it was why? Why do we do these? Yes, impressions are nice, and that's where it started. And look, years ago when I started, I used to call them CEO deals. You would find a CEO that was a fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs. You would offer he or she a pair of tickets, a rink board, a 30-second spot on broadcast, and you do a bit of an evaluation at the end of the day. Then the CFO got involved and said to the CEO, why are we spending all that money? And I'm glad measurement came up on the last one as well. So it became an impressions-based game. If your rink board or your courtside sign are getting 6 minutes of exposure and a 30-second spot is worth $40,000, you extrapolate it out over the year, and our signage in that game is worth $11 million a year, even though we're only paying $1 million. That's also a bit of a flawed logic and path that we built together when we were doing them. And today, it's moved to strategy, and we got very good at it in Toronto. And, Paolo's here from the NBA, and we worked with it in NBA Canada, and we partnered and did a lot of them there. And I kind of felt like when we started this 10 years ago, we were kind of leading edge. We had a bit of an internal challenge, and it was the Raptors were ranked 18th in the NBA in revenue. Toronto's actually the third largest market behind New York and LA. It's bigger than Boston, bigger than Chicago, but we were 18th in revenue. So we separated the two, and we put a philosophy behind the Raptors on why does this work and how do we do it. So integrated already came up. All these solutions have to be completely integrated. We have to focus on our partner objectives. We want to think like your agency. We need to sit down and be brief like your agency. What are your challenges? What's giving you a hard time? What are your issues? What do you need to change in the market? And we, knowing the passion and loyalty that our fans have for that mark on the front of the jersey, makes your product special and different. And the one thing I'm biggest on, and this is one of the hurdles we're trying to go through right now, is exclusivity. Because when I work with New Balance, and I want to get to the point where we have fewer partners, but we're working smarter together, and we can say to New Balance, you're the only one in the world that can use the Mets mark, that logo on the front, to make you special and different, because there are no other forms of marketing communication that are truly exclusive anymore. And the ability to do exclusive deals that are larger with the right partners gives you a completely different ability in the marketplace to be able to leverage your marks to make you special and different. So started with a little bit of work over our team over the last few years, or last year, I guess, trying to onboard in COVID, Zoom calls. We had a work stoppage. It's been very difficult, but we're in a pretty good spot right now, and I like where we're going. So the way we structured teams to be able to meet our partners' needs is we have a development team that's always out listening. Again, crypto would be a company right now that they're out exploring, talking, doing their pre-meets, bringing them down to ball games. And then we added in the middle a strategy group. It's a team of about 5 or 6 people. They're the ones that will join the development team to be able to really listen, because I could tell you from your brand side, I bet you get 80% of your proposals before someone's even asked you a question, asked you what are your challenges, what are your goals, why would you do this? They send you a deck, and it's got a outfield wall and a pair of seats and a 30-second in-game video board feature. So strategy are the people I look for that come from Deloitte's. They come from different backgrounds. They're not necessarily in sports, but they're marketers. And I think when we get more marketers, just like all the examples we've used today, thinking about integrated solutions, I think we get better. Digital and media sits on the side, and then activation is on the far right. And once a partner is under contract, we'll work with New Balance. We have a partnership strategy team, come with the activation team. And we sat down last year with Chris and his group and would say, what are the 3 things we can help you with in New York? And we know this product so well, and we know the demographics, and we know the group, that we can make those solutions. Because like we said, the impressions are there. We know we've got that already, but how do we drive it to make you special and different? And then at the bottom, we have business intelligence, because measurement's a key. You should be able to measure everything you do as long as you sit with your partner and you come up with clear objectives. They need to be clear, measurable objectives. Some of them can be impressions. Yes, it's still one of the cogs on the wheel, but it's not everything and anything. And that's the IBM example. We could give you 50 more of them and how we work. So it's been a fun start. We're just getting into this path, but it's one of the journeys that we wanted to roll and get on. So when we would come in and we would sit with your group, this is back to the agency piece and how we want to build it. First, we have to immerse ourselves in your brand. We sit down and we want to build strategy and ideate with you. When we were talking about building ideas together. Integrated platforms, when you think of all the assets we have, from television to digital to social, in venue, out of venue, there's 30 million people in our marketing home territory in New York. How are we talking to them? Too often we get focused on 42,000 people that are coming to the Mets game. You've got 30 million people in that home territory. And then the platform execution. It has to be flawless. That's why we built this team in a way where we have activation strategy and we have the support through digital and a BI team to be able to really deliver this like a packaged good marketer. That's where we're trying to get to. A couple examples that's worked for us really well so far, and I'll use New Balance, and I'm sure you can see a lot of people nodding when I use these examples, but when a deal's done, it kind of gets pushed aside because on the sports side, traditionally, it's kind of embarrassing. There's 6 salespeople, and there's 2 people on the service team because they service your deal. They make sure they check off the box that your tickets are in the mail and your outfield wall is up. And that's not how it works. The structure that we built, we can go and sit with New Balance, we can sit with Coke, we can sit with Ford, and we want to come in at the beginning of the year, and we might have done a deal 3 years ago, and there might be 6 assets in there that just didn't work. They don't work anywhere. Maybe they're not even relevant anymore. So we always have to be constantly evolving. And if we're sitting there always 3 times a year, 4 times a year coming in to meet with our partners to be able to understand, we have to be able to pivot. You don't pivot over 3 years. You pivot over 3 months. So every 3 months you have to refresh, measure, and be able to build it. Samsung, a recent deal we've done. If you look around baseball stadiums, our Samsung deal was extensive. It was one of the largest we've done. Baseball's big on a lot of static signage. It's kind of the tradition of the sport, but it doesn't necessarily make it right. So we built the largest digital transformation in baseball to date. We've taken the entire building and have built it so we have complete moments of dominance. So as you can see like you can see it a little bit on here, every sign at one moment of the game is Samsung. But it's not just about the signs, it's about the ability to activate. It's tying cities, challenging the hunger program every time the Mets hit a home run, being able to take over and dominate the building. How do you then tell that socially? How do you tell it digitally? What are you doing on broadcast? And it allows you to amplify everything you are doing in this market. So, it's been a fun journey. It's only started. It's an amazing opportunity with an amazing brand. I'm looking forward tonight to meeting a bunch more of you to be able to, and again, like I said, it's been so rewarding hearing everyone talk on the same page. For the first time I've ever heard that in a room where everybody understands what we're trying to build to produce these real, like some of the examples on the esports too were incredible on how to integrate and build into the games. Again, like I said, I'll meet you tonight. I'm looking forward to seeing anyone, but we got a fun road ahead and we're going to be looking to find the right partners to be able to take this to the next level. Any questions?
Back here?
I can see.
Hi, how's it going?
Good.
Great presentation. One question, when I think of the Mets, you have all these famous fans on Twitter, right? You have the Barstool guys.
Steve Cohen.
Yeah, Steve Cohen. Cousin Sal, Jimmy Cousin.
Yep.
His cousin. How do you approach those unformalized partnerships, those famous fans that drive so much of the social conversation? And sometimes they may be a little bit controversial and say stuff about their team that
Well,
maybe isn't that positive.
Yeah.
How do you approach that? Is that kind of just hands off, let the fans be fans, or how do you partner with that?
No, it's a really good question. They are a voice, and you can pretend to run and hide from the ones that you don't like. Like I'll tell you, opening day was the most successful in Mets history, but parking was a disaster. And I could have avoided every single comment or quote or whatever we did, right? We have 8,500 spots for 42,000 people. And with some of the incidents that happened in New York, it wasn't a perfect one. So we need to hire digital and social people under our CMO and our marketing side of the team to be able to address those of one-on-one. Steve is also very active. One of the stories when Steve and I were talking about, why I would go or what I would do, I asked him a question, why'd you buy the New York Mets? And he told me he wants to make people happy. And that's why he's so engaged in social, because he listens. Steve and Alex walk upstairs and give away tickets every night. They have security, they walk around. They go into the upper bowl, they have binoculars from downstairs in their suite to find families in the upper bowl and walk them down into their ownership seats. That's because they both listen and care. And it's the same respect we have to give our fans on digital and social. The Barstool one we've talked about, it's interesting because of the dynamic with Steve and all that, when they were talking, the GameStop stuff and all that we just kind of let that one go. But for the other voices, and incorporating them into more of our marketing, making us more authentic, again, another buzzword that's come up a lot of times, is very powerful. And it's one of the things when we try to define who we are. Like, who are the New York Mets? Why us? Why would a brand work with us? We are different than the Rangers and the Knicks and the Yankees down the street. Our building's completely digital, from concourse signages, which we're going to put in next year in phase 2, to the entire outfield. We don't have 300 static signs. We're not going to be that team. We should be a little more fun, a little more edgy, a little more nimble. We're not held to the same standards as some of the others. So identifying our brand, finding those right voices that can be controversial, but can also drive a lot of interest. Steve look at his handle. Like, he deals with these questions all the time. I get texts from him at 10 o'clock at night saying, hey, how can you answer this for me? And he's engaged. But it's one, because he cares. And it's two, it's something I don't think you should ever ignore, the social sentiment and what's being said. And it's finding a way to embrace those right voices in the right way, authentically, to be able to really live up to what your brand represents.
We have time for one more. Any other questions? Right over here.
Yeah, look, NFTs are huge. Always keeping an eye on what's changing in the marketplace. We look at the baseball season as 365 days a year. I don't really consider it starting in March. It's being able to build the right stories around the draft and what you're doing at spring, the momentum, the off-season trades, free agency. But we are looking. Look, MLB is difficult because of the way the media relationships are set up. It makes it a little trickier for us to be as creative in certain areas. They look at things more holistically, where we will work together as a league to be able to deliver those elements, and we're allowed to integrate our partners into those pieces. But it's a hot topic. It's finding ways to be the most creative in its own ways. Steve has a huge passion for art. And it's not just NFT drops. It's how does an NFT end up becoming your ticket, your experience to the game. The no-hitter last Friday. How is everyone in that night leaving with a digital NFT that says they were there, right? And there's only 42,000 of them, and they all live on their phone. The moments when you think, sticking with NFTs, when you think about losing the paper ticket, and what a moment that meant to people last Friday who no longer have paper ticket. How are you building that story and telling it within their venue or in the arena? So it's something we think about a lot. We haven't fixed it yet, and we haven't solved it. But the creativity with the way the organization has changed. We have a new CTO. We have a completely new digital and social team. We have a new CMO. It's an organization that's 1 year. It's literally 1 year old. It's a 1 year. Steve bought it last November. And as we start to integrate and build and pull people, I'm probably the only one with a traditional sports marketing background, like coming from Maple Leaf Sports. Andy Goldberg's our new CMO. He comes from an Amex, a GE, and a Jordan brand. Mark Brubaker's CTO. Oscar came from Legends. It's interesting, but bringing this dynamic group with experiences kind of all over the world and through sports, it allows us to explore and look at them and look at the different shoulder seasons or integrations differently.